Hello everyone and welcome to my kitchen with Cortex here, cooking to the best of my abilities but very inefficiently. So it is now close to Halloween. By the time I'm recording it's the 30th of October, but by the time I'm uploading I'm aiming for the 31st. If not, it might be the 1st of November, but in all cases, happy Halloween everyone out there. This year for Halloween I am, instead of actually playing free games, I am cooking something in relation to Halloween, and I'm going to make the bacon soup from Bendy and the Ink Machine. I am going to make this because I still have faith that there might be, at least at some point out in the future, a game called The Dark Revive coming out. The game has kind of met some bumps along the way. The studio have faced a giant flop which was called Showdown Bandit, at which case they also lost a lot of money to merchandise and to a lawsuit that is, as far as I can tell, still ongoing, and a lot of the staff at Joey Do Studio has been laid off or outright fired. Which means the game may not come in the future, but just to keep the hype up and just to show my support for it, I'm going to make Bendy and the Ink Machine bacon soup. Now if you're anything like me and basically see cooking food as really just a chore that you give yourself to make more chores afterwards and cleaning up after it, you really just want to kind of replace some of all your meals with something akin to this. Oh, what's that? This brand does not sponsor us, so I shouldn't talk about this brand at all. I definitely shouldn't specify how this brand kind of helps you to have a steadier diet, replaces a lot of your in-between snacks, helps you to lose weight very reliably, and overall is a great way to get on a healthier lifestyle than you already have. Okay, fuck it then. Now if you had any experience actually cooking foods, which me who has lived alone for over 10 years apparently do not have, well I do, but the thing I have don't really count towards that topic, then this would be an easy thing to make, requiring only a minimum amount of ingredients, sort of, which of many can be skipped and such, and the list of things will appear over here next to me. There is however a couple of predicaments with this one. The recipe uses the term called cup. I am not familiar with the term called cup, which meant that whenever I asked for a cup of something, it put me somewhere between using this and using this as a measuring reference. And this is a pretty big difference between the two, so I wasn't sure. I actually consulted an expert, and when I say an expert, it means someone who usually actually uses a goddamn kitchen. And they were referring to deciliters. Decimeters. Deciliters? They were referring to this scale over here. They weren't referring to an actual cup of something. Now, when taking a look upon this recipe, I'm looking from a Scandinavian European perspective, so many of these products either do not exist over here, or I would have to adapt them to local groceries instead, which don't really completely fulfill the recipe. There is, however, one thing. I, for one, don't think that cheese has anything to do with cooking. I have no idea why you would pollute your senses of taste with something like that. But that's just me being picky. That's not because cheese is a weird product. Peeling and dicing apparently everything, and well, I do have to admit I wasn't entirely efficient in my investment in this project, because I didn't want to buy 2 kilograms of carrot when I only need 100 grams in total, or 75 grams in total. I also didn't want to buy freaking tons of potatoes, because I really just needed one big strong potato. The first thing you do here is you need to peel and dice absolutely everything apparently, except for the onion. The onion we get to later. The onion kind of requires me to put on a gas mask because I'm an adult man. I can't show signs of weakness and crying. Fuck am I even going to peel this thing? This kind of brings us over to the next step here, now that we have at least peeled, and that is to cut everything here into tiny diced pieces and add it to the bowl of soup, which I guess shouldn't be that hard if your table had an even surface. My table does not have an even surface, and this board is apparently very, very unstable. What the fuck is going on here? Apparently this is what I dice with. I only have 10 fingers. You wouldn't believe that I have actually been in a kitchen and a galley before when you see my chopping skills, but that's because my chopping skills have been stale. Yeah, good enough. Then we have this freaking rock of a potato. I don't even know how the hell to cut that efficiently. How do I cut this? This is not me being bad, this is just me not knowing how the hell to grab this task by the balls. I think I'll just start chopping. I have never been so confused in my life when it comes to making a freaking meal for myself. And according to recipe, that's already way too much potato. So I guess I'm just going the Russian way and making more potato. I was actually afraid I wouldn't have enough potato for this goddamn task, so I actually ended up buying 3 of these instead of just 1. Apparently not everything is just big in the United States. Apparently we have the biggest potato. Or I just made an unlucky selection of potatoes. I live for potato, I die for potato. The difference is trivial. No, I was only supposed to use 75 grams or something. So why the fuck did I bring a 200 kilogram potato to the goddamn fight? I honestly think we got enough potato. I want more of it. Now, me being a human usually means 2 things. 1, I have feelings and emotions. And 2, I have a sense of smell. Both of those are kind of debatable in my case, but I'm going to pretend that I have them, and I'm going to use the usual countermeasures to ensure my health and my emotional integrity when I'm going to cut an onion.
What should probably prevent myself from crying when cutting up a freaking onion? Which I might not even be doing right for all I know. It was actually a fun fact. I couldn't buy individual onions, I had to buy an entire pack. And I am sort of against wasting stuff and food and such. So this means I do have an entire bag of onions laying around and I will never ever use them myself. So, if there's anyone out there who lives nearby my location, you can feel free to come by and I will give you free onions for coming here. You can also get free flour and 2 potatoes. The carrots I ate myself, because I like carrots. I only need a tiny bit of onion. Why did I give an entire pack? This is kind of big waste, you know, onion. It's a great food, it has more layers, there's more onion underneath it. You wouldn't think I would be able to cut an onion, but I actually do know how to cut an onion. At least I have been exposed to the ways of onion before. That's why I used the gas mask. I trust me, all this feel like onion is the kind of ingredient that can ruin food very, very quickly. This means I have an entire half onion, but someone can give. If you know my address when you come and get it for free, I won't charge you anything. Just remember to knock. Or leave in the comments below if you want to have a free onion. It's going to be a free onion, can't call it.
Now this is also where we'll have the largest deviation from the recipe as it is written. Because the recipe says that you're supposed to use 3 cups of bouillon soup, which I understand is some kind of chicken thingy flavor you add to water to make. The one we have here is mostly beef, so I'm going to skip that one, just use regular water, add it until it's tender. And while the recipe doesn't say anything about it, I have picked bacon that is already pre-diced. It doesn't say that it has to be diced one, but that's the only thing that makes sense. It doesn't say anything about preheating the bacon either, but I am going to put it on my pan for a couple of minutes before adding it into the soup. And now this might just be me, but I have a personal habit of whenever I am doing something with bacon, I put it in the microwave for a couple of seconds to get as much fat out of the bacon before I add it to my food as possible. Now, before we carry on, this is preheated water by the way, the recipe says to add a teaspoon or spoonful of butter. However, it uses the term TB spoon. So is that a tablespoon or is that a teaspoon? I do not know, I do not really care, so I'm going to give a spoonful of butter. Now this is, I don't normally myself use butter, as I have said before. Most of my products are something else. It feels kind of weird to put butter down in water, but this is what the recipe says, and this is how I interpreted it, and this is how I'm dealing with it. And then we can add all this stuff, all this over-dimensioned potato. It did not say anything about roasting these one in advance, so I'm not going to do that, even though that would also have made sense. But it doesn't say that, so I follow it and don't react to that. I mean, it looks somewhat good, I guess. Maybe a little bit too little water, but again, my dimensions are way off because I added so much potato. Now the recipe does say we need to add 400 grams of bacon, which is an absolute ridiculous amount of bacon, at least in my mind. But we are making bacon soup. On the other hand, I don't know how many portions this is supposed to give, judging by the size I have here. This looks like something for an entire family. So I honestly don't know if 400 is too much. But I'm definitely going to make 400 grams, preheat it all, and then you have already lost 10% of the, or you have already lost 5% of the total mass. Now this might just be this Dane bacon here that we have over here from First Price that is kind of filled with fat and such, but in my experience, if you want to make bacon, at least from this brand, or at least this kind of diced minced meat bacon here that I have, the best thing to do is put it in the microwave for a couple of minutes at a time and then pour away the fat, because the fat can be used for other things, but you also save having all this grease in your food at some later stage. This is at least how I tend to do it. I don't know if this is good thing, bad thing, whatsoever, but it feels good to know that all this grease does not come into contact with my food. I tend to do this for 2 minutes and then 2 times in the microwave before I declare that my food is ready to be put into food. Now, me being an engineer means that I'm of course interested in various kind of mathematics and such. And just to pre-establish why it was important for me to microwave my bacon, or at least some of it. Here is the plate, by the way, after 2 trips. Here is an empty cup put on my mechanical old scale, and it weighs 170 grams when it's empty. This is an empty cup, but it's of the same model. Then we have one that is filled with the grease and the fat from just one of those. And it weighs more. It weighs 120 grams, so that means that 50 grams have been taken out. So at the end of the day, when I add my 2 packs of bacon, only 300 grams of bacon actually gets applied into the meal, which kind of makes it a bit more, I guess, good, because all this grease wouldn't really benefit you to eat anyways. So now that we have pre-established that our bacon over here is absolutely terrible and filled with all kinds of grease and fat that isn't supposed to be in the final product, and all the good bacon in this country is being sent off to or elsewhere because that's more economical than feeding our own people with it, there is another reason why I like to put all kind of grease and such in a cup. And that is because this is currently liquid, but it's also 75 degrees hot, which means whenever it cools down, it will become solid. And if that goes down your drain, it will clog your system throughout. And I live in an apartment complex where the draining might not be optimal. It's kind of suboptimal. They did the best they could with the budget they had. So I like to wait for this to solidify and then throw it in the garbage bin instead for biological materials. Now this is kind of the point where I realized I made a mistake earlier. You weren't supposed to add the potatoes before the carrots and the onions were tender, I suppose, but oh well, it's all tender now, so fuck that. And here comes the freaking bacon. I am actually curious whether or not this can even fit in the freaking pot just because of how it works. But as said, the recipe didn't say you had to fry the bacon. I just did it because I feel like there was a better alternative here than to just take raw bacon and pour onto it. But hey, if they didn't say it, I can always sue him. I feel like this might end up tasting like grandma's ass because I have no clue of what I'm doing. This might be a giant letdown for anyone, and this is something Gordon Ramsay will have nightmares about. So now we're kind of step 3. It has had its time standing around doing nothing. Now they want me to add flour to it. They want me to add approximately 25 milliliters of 25 milliliters, or well, 25 grams of it or something like that. And frankly, this was the only flour I had available. So I now have 2 kilograms of freaking flour. I'm never going to use it anytime, anywhere, anyhow. I might throw it at someone, you know, for Halloween. I might throw it out my window at the people smoking in front of my window. But other than that, I'm not going to use this much flour. Ever. This one singular meal has made more dishes than what I do on an entire week with my diet plan. So what the hell, people? Why bother doing all this? I never understood the idea of this. I never understood why we have flavor in such high regard, when it literally does nothing but giving us more work to deal with. I put way too much flour in this, so I only need a quarter of what I just picked out. So this flour could basically just go out the freaking window. Now I moved it from this one over here to this one over here because that would give better angles of view, because I no longer need that up there, and because you guys can actually see what the hell I'm dealing with here. So the next step in the recipe would be to apply cheese, which I personally do not think belongs in food. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to apply the cream, the milk, and the pepper and the salt, and then I'm just going to let it cook for like 5 to 10 minutes. This recipe was supposed to be nice and easy, but it has taken me over an hour. And this is not just me fooling around, this is me actually doing the thing. It only needs a tiny bit of this. Something akin to that. Then it does need a fair bit of this. Something akin to that. And then it's to come up and boil and be stirred until it's ready to serve for the next 5 minutes. And I'm not gonna lie, this is going to take a lot of salt to taste whatever the hell kind of nightmarish fuel I've made here. And then it's also going to need some pepper because the recipe says so. That's the basic excuse. But literally, if your food tastes too well, that's kind of when you start adding pepper. I personally don't really like pepper, so I'll only settle for a tiny bit. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't look right. But my image of reference is really just a freaking cartoon drawing of a soup can that is probably 40 years old by the time of consumption. So I'm actually amazed that Henry Stein didn't freaking die from consuming it. This doesn't look that much like soup. This looks more like some kind of weird fucked up water that I've made. What kind of monstrosity have I unleashed upon this world? So, here's the end result. A weird looking stew, and I forgot a freaking ladle. It turns out I don't own a freaking ladle, so I'll have to make do with this spoon device thingy, and wow. And I don't know, make myself a portion of whatever kind of stew this has become. I guess if I ever want to torture a professional chef, I would really just serve them a pile of this, because I had no clue of what I was doing, and I really doubt that this was how it was meant to end up looking. I mean, the consistency is really much that one of water, but I guess it is kind of a soup. You see there? I mean, it doesn't look that bad. Question is, how does it taste, and how many kilograms of salt do I need to add to it to give any spectacle flavor? Let's try it. It's actually not bad. It appears awful. It didn't look right in the process. I have no clue how many steps I did wrong. I have no clue how many ingredients I actually had to skip out on because I didn't know what they were or didn't like them in the first place. But this is, by the looks of it, completely edible. So supposedly this is whatever there is in the bacon soup tin cans that you find around in Benny and the Ink Machine. I just burned my tongue off, apparently. So, I wish everyone out there a happy Halloween. I wish that you get all the candy you deserve, you spoiled little brats. And I definitely wish that JoJo Studio will continue the developing on Benny and the Ink Machine, The Dark Revival. I don't care how long it takes you guys. I will be there as soon as I know it's out there, and I will be willing to pay for the thing. At least moderately willing to pay for the thing. Bye bye, and I'll see you guys out there sometime post Halloween.